And we're live once again. Welcome back, guys, to another episode of the Solvable Mysteries Podcast. My name is Juras, and as every week, I'm joined by Glenn Highcove. Dude, is everything swell on your end on the Friday?
Yeah. Happy Friday, everybody. At least happy Friday for you and me, right?
Uh,
So,
yeah.
yeah. Happy Saturday morning for you, right? But yeah, it's a good time, I think to talk about something still a little bit heavy, but also lighter, right? So,
Exactly. And this is like
yeah,
the thing that we're going to be talking about, like, literally had some new developments pretty recently. So
yeah,
to my understanding, we don't even have the complete picture as of yet. It's not being publicly released. I believe you have some interesting details that has not yet been shared on this particular case that we're going to be talking about, like anywhere, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah. So, I've been this case we're going to talk about. I feel like I've been following it for about a year, I think. Like I know I've seen stuff about it, saw some cool stories about it that we're going to reference. And then lo and behold, like I think in just this past month or so, they actually solved it, which is awesome, I think, for everybody involved. And yeah, the best part is when all this is done, there was one piece of info that I think everybody wanted to know, which was the age of the person. And I cannot find it anywhere in the news stories, but I did a little digging on my own using some resources that, are maybe publicly available, but I don't think a lot of people use them. And I think I figured out just about how old this guy is within about a year.
Dude,
So,
dude,
yeah.
that's actually really cool. We did, you just mentioned this fact to me. We didn't really go over what you found. So for me, this is gonna be just as interesting as for the general audience members who are listening to this podcast, because I don't know what you have for us. So it's gonna be interesting to hear about that. I think you have some initial words regarding this case before we jump into it, right?
Yeah, I mean, excuse me, for the kind of stuff that we do, a lot of it is really like, sometimes super dark or involves like just devious crimes. And, for sure there's reasons to be really interested in that, but also it's pretty upsetting. And then sometimes you run into like a really interesting story where the thing that everybody's paying attention to isn't really about like a crime happening to somebody. It's almost like something happened, like someone died who was really great, and everybody that met this person just couldn't help but notice how nice they were. I mean, this person made, in just kind of this brief period of time on the Appalachian Trail, just made an enormous impact on all these strangers. And, like they really liked him. And then he died. And then what was kind of crazy was, I guess, in this age of like social media, in this age of new media, in this age of, you know, one of us having an enormous impact, way bigger than we would have like in the 80s or 90s. So this guy became internet famous. And he became internet famous not for doing something stupid or dumb or offensive. He became internet famous for dying while he was a nice guy, which is, I guess if you're going to die, um, that's the way to do it, right? Because this guy left a legacy behind of people that, really appreciated him. But then on top of that, the big part was there was a genuine mystery here, is that this guy died in kind of an odd way, and he died without anybody really knowing his name, at least at the time. So there was a good period of time where, this guy went, and he met a lot of people, and then he suddenly died in this weird, strange way. So then it was interesting that, I guess it makes you wonder, like, what is it that makes us all pay attention to things like this? What makes this so compelling? And I feel like in a way it's almost like it kind of it gets at these roots of like these roots in terms of our purpose. Like, what's our purpose in life? What's the meaning of life? I think it's very scary to think that someone might die out there alone with no one to even know it until, some good amount of time later. And, especially that it was a nice person. we always want to think that good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people. And for a little while, it kind of looked like a bad thing happened to a good person, though. Honestly, it does really just look like it was the cycle of life a little bit, though, admittedly, for somebody way younger than any of us would ever want to die at that age. So I think from that, I think it's a pretty good lead in terms of understanding who this person is and who the mostly harmless, mysterious dead hiker was.
Yeah, dude. Well, to that I want to mention a little detail that, from what I've gathered, the dude wasn't really that nice of a person later on, when they found out about who he was and his, like, past life. That's just something I want to mention, right?
Oh, interesting. See, I didn't know that. See, once again, see, maybe that's like the other aspect of this is that there's sort of this overwhelming buzz where, what maybe this is what they call the halo effect. The halo effect is where, because of some characteristic of a person, you tend to almost just see them universally in one way, like a good way, like a halo over an angel.
Yeah.
And there's a in social sciences, that's one of the criticisms is that good-looking people sometimes sometimes they get unfair breaks, to the positive. So they get hired maybe for jobs they're not qualified for, get discounts and nice things coming to them, while someone who's more mediocre looking doesn't get any of that benefit of the doubt. So interesting, and I seem to have fallen victim to that. All right, see,
Yeah.
gonna learn some stuff today.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to get into it right now, but yeah, he did like some pretty messed up things, especially to like, seems to, I mean, he did some messed up things to his like girlfriends and things like that. Like some domestic violence for like multiple years on multiple occasions. So yeah, it's definitely a situation where it's probably like a wolf in sheep's clothing a little bit, because I don't know. I mean, a lot of people really liked him when they found about his story, but I feel like right now, like, his past is really coming out. And yeah, I think we could like start with a story of how everything began. I don't know, man. You wanna give us a little like background on this guy or something like that?
Yeah. So in around April 2017, there's this guy that starts hiking in a state park just north of New York City. Just worth pointing out. I mean, I know I didn't know this. For all of what we always think of, like, New York City and New Jersey and that whole area, and you always think of like huge cities because that's what's there. There's also, I guess it makes sense, the part that isn't city is super rural. So upstate New York is actually like a pretty rural area. And obviously, anything outside of the big New York City can be rural. And it's worth pointing out that there's something over on that side of the United States. There's a bunch of connected trails called the Appalachian Trail, and it's basically the trail to hike if you wanted like a big challenge in your life and you wanted to hike a trail in the United States. It's one of those things that maybe people would only try to tackle like they would try to tackle once in their whole lifetime. If that makes sense. There's even a kind of a cool movie about it. I think it's got trying to think. I think it was Jack Nicholson was in it. Anyway, yeah. So because of that, it's a pretty busy trailhead, and we've talked about this before. Anytime you get away from civilization, it's like you escape one kind of crime or one kind of risk, and you, as you've seen from some of our other cases, you run into a whole other set of risk profiles of things that can happen. But anyway, I think maybe because of that, people are so much more grateful when they meet someone nice. So,
Yeah.
These hikers are going and they're in the area and they run into this guy. This guy, he just seems like he's trying to get away from everything. He's like a handsome guy. He's got some gray hair. Doesn't have a phone, doesn't have a credit card. He didn't really tell anybody his name, which is the source of the mystery. What he did have was a giant backpack, which was described as being too heavy for the journey. I think that's interesting because I do know for that trail or those series of trails, you're not going to bring like all your groceries. Like you're expected to stop along the way and kind of top up and get more groceries. But I'm still kind of wondering, like, what kind of backpack could he have had that would have been too big? Because I used to do backpacking back in the scouting days, and I can't even imagine unless he just bought like a mountain climbing backpack or something ridiculous. I don't know, but
I
yeah.
think
So he's on the.
there's, yeah, I just want to step in
Go
for
ahead.
1 second. I think the backpack, I think there's like multiple pictures of him with a backpack. It's like this one big red backpack, and it literally was the type of a backpack where like the top part of the backpack was like over his head, and I would say the bottom part of the backpack started below his like waist, so you could just imagine like how big of a backpack. I mean, some people that he met on the trail actually said that that backpack weighed somewhere from around 50 to 60 pounds. I was thinking to myself, yo, this dude started somewhere in New York. He ended up going, on foot to pretty much southern Miami, like southern Florida, I'm sorry. And I mean, whoa, that's a long trek. And like some of the people that he met on the trail actually asked him whether or not they could help him out uh, with the backpack, because they noticed he, especially when he was walking in the Florida area, at one point, I think the weather was like 80, somewhere around 80 Fahrenheit. And one of the guys that he met, who was like apparently a trail angel. I didn't know about, tracking that much. I didn't know about trail angels. Pretty much these people are just people who help out the passerby trekkers, leaving them like water, things like that. So he met one of the this dude, mostly harmless, the the trekker. He met one of the trail angels. Now this dude, I think I have some information on him. Maybe we'll stop talking. We'll stop at this point later on the show. I think he asked mostly harmless, "Yo, what do you have in that backpack?" And then he said, "Oh, just things like that here and there, stuff like that." Then this trail angel noticed that he had like winter clothes in Florida when it's like 80 Fahrenheit, and and the trail angel was like, "Yo, I could send these for you to your like family members. You could just give me your heavy stuff. I could just send it off because you definitely won't be needing these clothes in Florida at that point, because I think it was like the warmer season." But the dude, mostly harmless, said he declined this offer. Uh, and some people are thinking that he declined this offer because for two reasons. First of all, he didn't want his family members to know where he was, and the second part of the reasoning behind his decline of this offer was that he didn't want to let the trail angel know where his living locations is, because that's pretty much like giving your identity away. Another interesting thing, I'm not sure if you would have mentioned this, so before you continue on with the story, I just want to mention this fact that apparently when you're walking trails, it's a big thing, to not really tell your real name to the other trekkers. For say, this dude that we're talking about, he had three, I would say, nicknames throughout his trek. So one was mostly harmless, that he got one day when he was asked on a campfire by someone, "What's your name?" And he was like, "Oh, I'm just mostly harmless." So that's the first time he would mention that. He was also known as Denim. Denim is a name that he, I think, gave to himself or something like that, or maybe someone else gave it to him. And I believe Denim, the name for this trekker, was given at the beginning of this trek, somewhere around the New York area, when he was pretty much spotted by other trekkers trekking the Appalachian Trail in like jeans. So that's people were like, "You're crazy," and they gave him the name Denim. And then also his last name, I have no idea why he used this one, was Ben Billamy. So he was using Ben Billamy as a name to check in into hostels, because I'm assuming like if you're like going to like official establishments where you probably have to pay some money to stay overnight, they're not gonna be like mostly harmless. Yeah, dude, like what's your name? Or like Denim, come on, dude, what's your name? So I think he made up the Ben Billamy name just so he could like live in like public establishments and things like that. So yeah, that's all I have. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like a little on the fence. So I'll tell you, when I was I've done probably a couple hundred miles of backpacking and hiking in my life, and that's pretty much all in the first half of my life that I did it. Um, and yeah, on one hand, like I wasn't carrying any. So you said like around 50, 60 pound pack. So what, between 15 and 20 kilos, I guess, for the Europeans. That's heavy. I mean, mine were probably, the most was probably maybe 25 to 30 max. And, like, what do you have in a backpack? You usually got, maybe you got, if you're by yourself, you might have a stove, some kind of food, maybe one or two things of water, depending on whether you can refill in water every day someplace, a bedroll. So, like sleeping bag and a pad, and then maybe a tent, unless he's sleeping out in the open. So it looks like he started in April up in New York, and then by the time he got down to Florida, it was like January. I do take a little issue with someone who's like, "Oh, well, what are you doing with winter clothes?" Like, yeah, for sure, this is like hot weather months, getting into the South, but especially at elevation, um,
Oh yeah.
temperature changes pretty fast. Like, you definitely I just will say, like, if you've ever been somewhere at night that it was like a hot day, and then suddenly at night it turned cold, it really sucks. Like, there's not really any way to get warmer if you don't have warm clothes.
Oh
You know
yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah,
Well,
that's
at
I
least you
know.
can get cooler.
Yeah,
Yeah, if you
yeah.
have hot clothes. And then the other thing is, I don't know, like I get people are like, oh, he's wearing denim and jeans, and why isn't he wearing um like shorts? But hey, like if you're worried about maybe poison ivy, some people are really, really sensitive to poison ivy and poison oak versus others, like especially if he's ever had an outbreak before. If he's just worried about falling down, any of those things, like check it out. Like, if he can't get medical attention, it's kind of like he's wearing extra skin. So I don't know.
I think
Yeah.
yeah, I just want to stop with like the detail that he was wearing denim. I think the reason that the real reason why he was wearing denim is because we will probably get into this later on. I'm not sure if we will, so I just want to mention the fact that
Yeah.
apparently he left his apartment in a rush. Like, there was all sorts of stuff found in his apartment, like food, etc., etc. I believe when they entered his apartment, he hadn't paid his apartment bill for, I think, a year and a half, or was it like 15 months? Because that's when the landlord got, I think, something from some legal document from the courts that they can enter this guy's apartment that he wasn't paying rent. And I was thinking, in New York, 15 months. I had the assumption that you don't pay your rent for like 1 month, they're kicking down your door. Like, New York is like the hustle and bustle state, no nonsense type of a state. And he was living in Brooklyn, and you get to like live in Brooklyn, not not pay your rent for like 15 months or
Yeah.
something like that. So
You
basically
know what it is?
yeah.
It's because we have, depending on where you live, there's rules that protect you. Like, it's not so cutthroat. There's some rules that protect you from getting evicted, and some states and some places, especially if they're like, quote unquote, progressive, you could be squatting for a long time. Dude, I know somebody that bought a house, and when he got to the house he bought, there were squatters living in it that ran him off with a gun, and he had to spend like a year and a half trying to get these people out of his own house that he bought. So yeah, it
Yeah,
happens.
so yeah, and basically, he apparently left in a super hurry. That's why he was wearing denim or something like that. Because people are thinking that he started his trail, on the Appalachian trails, like not really that well prepared, even though he had that backpack. So I think he was just, personally, I think when he started his trail, he didn't know when he was gonna stop
Okay,
trekking. So
so
that's
he's homeless. Yeah.
pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So yeah, I mean, basically, then maybe that's why he was so private about his things, because like a lot of homeless people, he's super territorial over, the only things that he owns, and maybe that's why his backpack's so heavy because he's crammed everything that was actually worth it to him into that backpack. So okay, makes sense.
Yep.
So yeah, he's going down this trail. He started in New York. He brought a little notebook that was sort of his little pet hobby, where he would scribble notes about some kind of game called Screeps. I think it was a online programming game he was working on. So it's interesting because there's a whole class of game around that are like where you like pretend to program. By the way, if you want to learn programming, you could just go program in real life, and that's definitely hard enough. But there's definitely a whole genre game around that on Steam.
Yeah.
So he's following the trail. He's meeting up with people. He's moving steadily from New York through Pennsylvania, then Maryland. As he's talking to people, he's saying that he worked in the tech industry, and he was trying to detox from digital life. And yeah, I mean, I guess a lot of us have been there for sure, especially if you feel like you've been spit out by the industry at any point. You already mentioned his pseudonyms that he got. Maybe that's something particular to that specific trail. So I don't really know anything about that hiking culture here in the West Coast.
Yeah.
And as he's going, it's interesting. So by summer, so we go from April, fast forward through to the summer. He's in Virginia, and he spends he walks. It sounds like a lot, right? He walks 100 miles with this 66-year-old lady who went by the trail name Obsidian. And she taught him how to make a fire. So he didn't even know how to make a fire, and he were going on that long.
Yeah, I have this also in my notes that,
Yeah.
the fact that he didn't even know how to make a fire, that's sort of an indication that he was not that well prepared for the trip,
Yeah. I mean, I will actually, the other thing I just thought of is, as much as we're making a big deal about a 60-pound pack, like people in the military, let's say like grunts in the army or Marines. I don't know. I think they would say, 60-pound pack was like their lightest day when they were doing basic training, or especially special forces people will go much farther with much heavier packs. So he was a dude that looked like he was in shape. So I don't know. I just think
I
it
just
was like
want to
beyond people's comfort level. Yeah.
exactly. I just want to mention one thing, that he always had like knee braces, and it seemed like he had knee problems. And especially since we're talking about like the Obsidian sighting, the woman who was a 66-year-old woman, and they were trekking for 100 miles across Virginia, as you've mentioned. Well, at first you would think, because this guy was quite a bit younger than Obsidian, I think more than 20 years younger. At first you would think, that this is an unlikely pair to be trekking together, but actually they were really, it made sense because they had to actually trek at the same pace pretty much, but because both of them had like knee problems. I mean, the 66-year-old woman, that pretty much makes sense, you would sort of
Yeah.
have some sort of issues, but for him, yeah, it seemed that he had knee problems. I mean, he also had that gunshot wound, let's remember. So I mean, I wouldn't say he was like the healthiest person in the world, even though he, like the friends, his like real life friends, when everyone found out who he was, and his friends got informed that your friend was doing this crazy trek across America. I mean, they were informed that they were shown his pictures on the trek, and they said that he probably looked at like the healthiest he's ever been on this trek. So that's another thing to mention, that even though he was trekking really hard with this big backpack that weighed 60 pounds, had knee braces, he did seem healthy, or at least healthier than ever to his friends. So I'm assuming his lifestyle in Brooklyn, New York definitely wasn't the best in terms of his health. I mean, he apparently was like really into games, and he left behind like a whole bunch of his stuff, like gaming stuff, So I'm assuming he spent like most of his days in New York either programming for work or like playing video games.
Ooh, I smell a big rant by me at the end of this episode based on what I'm hearing so far. So food for thought. Okay. So yeah, that's good to know. I think that builds a better picture definitely than what I had read so far. Uh, so yeah, I mean it is interesting. Oh, by the way, he told Obsidian he wanted to see a bear. Boy, be careful what you wish for,
For
because
real.
out there,
I've
yeah, I
I've
mean black,
seen, dude. I've seen videos
yeah,
of like, I've seen this video like over the last week where I don't know what it was. I think they were like releasing some injured bear into the wild after they like
yeah,
sort of, fixed that bear up. Like they or something like that. They just marked it something like that. So they had like this big steel cage. They were opening this big steel cage, and there was this like camera right next to it, and literally the bear is like probably been in captivity for the last few weeks at least. The second he got out of that cage, he immediately, like within 1 second, he like rushed towards that camera. And it just made me realize that bears are actually a lot faster than you would think. And it just made me think like a lot of people died, seeing that for the last time, like that whole
oh
scene.
yeah.
Because I'm assuming when a bear hits you, you're like probably, if you're lucky, you're like dead within seconds.
Well, no, that's the worst part about bears. So like a wolf or a lot of the predatory cats, they'll they'll actually try to like kill you, like you said, clamp down on your neck because they're weak enough that they need you to stop struggling and then drag you off. But a bear is so big. Rogan always talks about this on his show. A bear will hold you down and eat you alive just because it can. It doesn't need to kill you. It doesn't need to go because like at the end of the day, it might even be riskier to try to kill you and get blinded or get its eyes scratched up than to just hold you down where you can't get at it and just eat you from the middle out. So yeah, and then what's crazy is I think that's an area where it's more black bears. I don't even know if they have brown bears in that part of the U.S. And that's the crazy thing is brown bears are bigger. So think of like grizzly bears or like Kodiak bears and stuff like that, like you have out by you. But those things are actually they're kind of cowardly unless you catch them kind of in the wrong time of year. Like you can kind of scare them and intimidate them. But brown bears are smaller, and for some reason they seem to be more persistent or aggressive. Like here in California, here in Los Angeles, we don't even have brown bears anymore. I think they went extinct in this part of the U.S. Even though it's on our state flag. But that's what does come out of the mountains sometimes into some of our neighboring areas is just a black bear that's after the trash. So anyway, yeah, I definitely wouldn't want to see one. Um, oh, and by the way, I just like to say if it was me and I was this dude, I would just literally want like a pair of pants, a jacket, my sleeping bag, and like a t-shirt and maybe a couple pairs of underwear and my water, and that's it. And I guess a stove. Like I personally would not want to be dragging any 60-pound backpack anywhere. My backpack would weigh 15 pounds, and that's it, dude. But wow, so this guy wasn't doing his knees any favor. By the way, it's kind of interesting to think maybe that was kind of a surrogate, like mother-son relationship between him and Obsidian, right? Little
Mm,
substitute. She's kind of being motherly to him. He's kind of helping taking care of this older lady, and it's completely platonic, right?
yeah.
It's not it's not romantic, and they're taking care of each other. It's interesting to think that people might fall into some substitute relationships. Just like I don't know if you ever lived next to like an elderly couple and you don't have kids yet, and their kids aren't around. Sometimes it'll turn into that same kind of relationship where you kind of treat them like, you kind of care about them like they're your parents a little bit, and they'll kind of care about you like you're their kids. So
Yeah.
it's not so strange. Okay, so by December 1st, he's made it all the way down to northern Georgia, and he runs into a hiker who was working at a kind of a general store there called Mountain Crossings, and this is yet another social contact where he's exchanging data, and he's talking some big stuff, right? Because he's in northern Georgia and he wants to go all the way down to the Florida Keys. So he got a route. The guy's like, oh yeah, I know a route you can download to your phone, and the dude, mostly harmless, is like, I don't have a phone. So I guess on one hand, to this guy it seemed like, oh wow, this guy's living the life. Like you know, going no tech, mountain man. But
Yeah,
to someone else, now in retrospect, we're like, oh, that's the sign of somebody living on the edge of desperation,
exactly.
potentially.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I have that, this man, I believe his name was Matt, right? Matt Mason, who ran the store.
yeah,
So basically, mostly harmless goes into the store. He asks Matt Mason for a route to Key West, Florida, and I think Key West, Florida will play a big part in this story. Actually, now, Matt said, you could get that trail on your phone, and mostly harmless was like, I don't have a phone. And Matt's quote is that he thought that mostly harmless is awesome, like he's a cool guy, and he act like so he didn't want to let, I'm assuming, mostly harmless just walk towards Key West, Florida, um, without any like maps or anything like that. So he actually offered him to print 60 pages worth of maps for $5. So that's what happened. And also, Matt Mason noticed that actually mostly harmless pay, like he produced out of his pocket like a big stack of cash. Later we found out that that was around 350 I'm sorry, $3,500. So he had like this big stack in his pocket. He produced that stack. He was like, here's your $5 out of like this big chunk of like money. And he was on his way pretty much. And also
yeah. I mean,
a Facebook. I
it's
just want to mention the fact that
yeah,
also a Facebook post was made regarding this. So Matt actually made a Facebook post that later actually became a big clue in this case, because when Matt made that post, he didn't know that this was gonna turn into like one of the biggest like internet mysteries, in recent times. So he didn't know that, but he made a Facebook post like stating, "Yo, this guy is crazy, but I really like him," things like that.
did he? I mean, did he tell everybody that this guy waved a big wad of cash in his face? I mean,
I think it
I hope he
was.
didn't say that.
I don't think so, but yeah, I see the
Okay.
point. Yeah, because
Yeah.
that would probably not be ideal for his safety. I think later on in the investigation, like sheriffs and things like that, they contacted Matt Mason, and this is. I think that stack of money was like seen by probably more people. So I think that's sort of just the general information that police investigators managed to uncover about this guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I guess it says good things about, the area that nothing happened to him with regards to that money, let's say, as it turns out.
Oh yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, and believe it or not, by the last week of January, I mean, the map you have, it almost is flabbergasting to think how far this person went on foot. But I guess it really shows you, where there's a will, there's a way, even with two knee braces and all that. So, and like I said, it turns out a worse state of health than one might have imagined. So, yeah, he's in northern Florida, another one of these trail angels, one of these helper people. A lady named Kelly Fairbanks pulls over to say hi, and she, this is one of the things she does is she. I guess this is, some people take care of puppies and dogs, and some people take care of other people. And she's one of those people. So she, helps and offers them food and access to a shower. And she's actually looking for someone else. She sees him. She pulls over, makes contact. They start to talk. He said that he started in. I mean, I wonder if her jaw dropped when he said he started in New York. I mean, for sure, people make that whole trail, but still, that's just amazing. And she's like, "Oh, are you using the Florida Trail app? I guess that's their local app to get around there." And he's like, don't have a phone." And she's pretty experienced. She looks at what he's got, and she's like, "Wow, he's got a weird mix of equipment, including like trekking poles, and like I said, it's just like a really strange mix of stuff. Maybe there's like warning signs that she looks for to see if anybody needs extra help. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
in terms of warning signs, I don't know. I think she seemed really. She seemed worried from what I've managed to get at, Kelly Fairbanks, she did play a pretty big role. I think she was like the initial puzzle piece that helped solve the case later on. Her statements later on, as she took the pictures, because we are right now on the visuals, we are seeing like this dude's pictures. And if I'm not mistaken, these pictures are actually what broke the case, because initially, or not necessarily what broke the case, because the case was still a mystery, even though we had the pictures of mostly Harmless for a very long time. But I think Kelly Fairbanks, like this trail angel that you've just mentioned, she was actually the first person in my, if I'm not mistaken, she's the first person who actually connected these pictures to the dead guy found in southern Florida, that we'll get into it. So that's one thing to mention about Kelly, that she played a big part in solving this case for sure.
Yeah, it just goes to show you when the how much value that there is in documenting something, and not just documenting it with your words or your memory, but a picture. Picture really does speak 1,000 words, right? So that's because of her. We have some of these great images, and maybe a better fleshed out picture. So, yeah, she's looking at him and she's like, "Wow, this guy has a big old beard and gray hair and stuff." But she's looking at his eyes. His eyes don't look old. Didn't have crow's feet around his eyes, and she's like, "Gosh, like, I don't think he's as old as he sort of gives the appearance of." And I guess she just feels, I guess, neighborly, or she's just I guess maybe a good person, a caring person that cares about other human beings. And she starts to get concerned about him, and like you said, it's hot. I mean, Florida's friggin' brutal, man. You couldn't pay me to go hike in Florida. Um,
For
and
sure.
it's hot. It's hot and muggy. But what's he wearing? I mean, he's wearing stuff that like I would wear if it was 50 degrees out in California, and he's wearing like I mean I don't know, man. Have you ever been? You've traveled around. Have you ever been in like super humid, like 90, 100% humidity?
90% humidity. Yeah, maybe when I was like, I would say in Egypt, because I remember
Oh yeah.
when I was like with the family vacation in Egypt, like way back in the day. Um, we were staying at this hotel and things like that. We actually went out, just to sit by the pool a little bit. It was like the first day, and I immediately like jumped to the pool because it was like super hot. So I sort of got my, I was chilling in the pool for a while, and I got my shoulders, above like the water, and I was chilling like that for like, I don't know, just talking to like some, I think like local Egyptians or something like that. So I was talking with these guys because they spoke English, and my shoulders got destroyed within like 10 minutes, and for like the next 3 days I had to stay inside because 10 minutes in the Egyptian sun got me messed up like crazy. So I was definitely messed up, and I remember that that was a crazy situation. So I definitely understand that fact that yeah, like trekking through Florida in that weather,
Oh yeah.
I don't know. Also, let's imagine the fact that Florida has like gators. You know what I mean? Like I don't
Oh
wanna.
yeah.
And he was found in a swampy location, which I'm assuming definitely like had some sort of a gator um, presence.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, yeah, I mean, Florida is just pretty much the same weather as Central America, which I've been to both, and yeah, it's if
Crazy,
you're
right?
not used to it, yeah, it's brutal. I mean, and then yeah, and so I mean, I guess the long sleeves were at least giving him some kind of sun protection. So maybe there's something to be said for that. And I'm sure someone from Florida will tell us, hey, it gets cold here sometimes, and maybe northern Florida is a little different. I don't know, but yeah, like I said, there's definitely gators and stuff down there. So goodness, who wants it? Um, yeah, so he's still he's still hiking. It's getting pretty hot, and 6 months later, what happens is, some other hikers are down in the Big Cypress National Preserve, and they're, like you said, they're crossing swamps and like you said, literally dodging alligators and snakes. Oh, one last thing. I don't know if you know this. Florida has a big problem with, I think it's Burmese pythons. There's an
Oh.
invasive species. So what happens is there's a species of python that grows super big, and it's not from here. It's from, like Southeast Asia, and people brought them in like fish tank. I mean, pet stores and crap like that, and just let them go when they got tired of them or they got too big. And they're giant, dude. They're like as long as a bus, and there's big bounties and stuff to try to kill these stupid things because they're like eating stuff in the swamp in the wild they're not supposed to eat. They're multiplying all over the place. Sometimes they try to eat an alligator and they literally explode from trying to eat something that was too big because they don't have something that big where they come from. Anyway,
Mm.
yeah. So that's the kind of stuff that's out there in the Florida wilderness. And yeah, so these hikers are out there and they go to stop at this one camp called Noble's Camp, and there's a yellow tent nearby, and there's a pair of boots outside, like somebody taking a little nap, and then they smell something bad, and they're like, "Uh oh, somebody took like the last nap of their life," because they look inside and they see, I'm quoting from the Wired article here, an emaciated, lifeless body looking up at them. So they called 911 and said, "We just found a dead body."
Yeah, pretty much. They called the cops, right? They reported the dead body. I think one of the hikers stated that his all of the pain from his feet, because when you're a trekker, I would say a big part of trekking is like your feet hurting, right? So his quote also is that, I mean, I don't have his exact quote, but what he said was that his pain just vanished away from his feet immediately because that's a crazy sight. I personally have never seen, I believe, well, obviously besides like funerals, I've been to like a million funerals, especially like in 2020 everyone was like dying, but I will say I've never ran into like a dead dude. Oh wait, I have. Okay, yeah, that's another story. Nevertheless, uh, that's probably crazy, right? Just seeing like a dead dude like
Yeah.
that, crazy. Also, I want to mention one fact that since we're talking about like the sightings, and I think we're gonna be jumping into the backstory pretty quickly now. Uh, I want to say one thing right now that he actually met another dude. I think I have his name. His name is Mike Gornley. So this was the guy that he met. I think still while he was, I believe, somewhere in the northern. No, no, not necessarily at the northern, but like 10 miles away from the sighting where he was found dead, if that makes sense. He met Mike Gornley 99 days before his body was found by those other two hikers. And Matt was also surprised when he was notified by sheriff's office, because sheriff actually contacted Mike Gornley as he was the last known person to have talked to Mostly Harmless. And when they told him that they found Mostly Harmless dead in his tent the way they had, Mike was actually really surprised, because just 99 days ago when he was talking to Mike, he actually thought that Mostly Harmless was feeling really good. You know what I mean? Like he was having a good time trekking, he was smiling, because he was not like depressed, or at least didn't let anyone know that he was depressed. I think that's a big part of depression. A lot of depressed people are probably like hiding it, I would assume. So sometimes that's an indication if like someone's really closed off and like happy, and not like happy in a sense that you could feel that it's a natural happy. Sometimes it's like a forced happy feeling. I think that's very dangerous when people get into that state of mind, because you could do like crazy stuff like Mostly Harmless did. And last thing I want to mention about Mostly Harmless, if you look at the map really quickly, right, he stated to multiple other trail people that he was trailing with, things like that, that his end goal was Key West, right? Key West, right here. So Key West, I didn't know about the city Key West, but it for sure seems like probably the coolest city in America at this point. I mean, I believe it's like the most southern I think so. It's probably like the most southern place in America, actually Key West. So it's not like Texas, not Brownsville. It's probably Key West. So it's for everyone who's listening to this podcast, not on our YouTube channel and can't really look at the map for some reason at this point. I'm talking about like Key West is this small, I would say, almost like an island city below Miami. So apparently there is this like highway or something like that. Yo, dude, do you know if
Yeah.
Miami and Key West is connected by a bridge or something like that? Because on the Google Maps right now, I'm seeing a outline of a road, so you can just walk across from Miami to Key West.
I don't know about walking, driving. Yeah, I believe you
Oh,
can. So
okay.
I've on my some of my business travels, I've gotten to stay in like Key Biscayne, which is I think one of those southern keys across there. And yeah, it's pretty cool. Like I
Whoa.
haven't been that far south, but yeah, no, it's super awesome. I mean, by the way, I'll just throw in that Miami is so far been one of my favorite cities to visit. I mean, it's pretty cool when you visit. It's a really nice looking city.
Oh, I
It's
would
got a
say, yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's definitely it looks really nice. It's got a lot of neat stuff, and if you ever have the privilege of having someone else pay for it, like I did several times, which was pretty awesome. Yeah, it's like it's pretty neat, and I had some in-laws down there for a while. We drove around. It's pretty cool. Yeah, I mean they literally built highways and bridges and stuff over to connect all these islands because otherwise you'd have to have ferries, right?
Exactly.
So if you're gonna get a lot of business done, you might as well just spend the money and make the road and enrich the place. And by the way, it's also some of the most expensive housing in the United States, and it's also one of the areas that gets wrecked all the time when there's hurricanes.
Yeah, dude,
So
it's
yeah,
seriously, if I was rich or something like that, at this point I'm not, and if I could afford a house in Key West, I would probably not make that decision, because I would assume within like the next 20 years Key West is going to be underwater regardless. I mean, they're probably going to like try to fight it off or something like that. I mean, I'm not an expert, that's just my analogy right now. Anyways, dude, let's jump
yeah.
into
Yeah,
how.
let's jump into the death and investigation real quick, right? Because somebody
Exactly,
might ask,
exactly.
someone might be like, "Hey, I mean, why are you guys making such a big deal about a dead person?" I mean, it's true, right? If I listen to my scanner, my radio scanner all day here in Los Angeles, I mean, I'll hear multiple dead bodies get found by the fire department, and not even anything insidious, not murders. I'm just talking about people that just died in their house, right? Or died at the bus stop or whatever. Life and death. It happens all day long. People are born, people die. Well, it was a little weird because on one hand, people, like we said, people already met this guy doing this pretty long trek on foot. He made at the time a pretty positive impression on the people that met him. I mean, they thought he was a nice guy. And then there's just a quick string of things I'll read off why it was a little more mysterious than maybe the usual corpse, because it turns out it's usually pretty easy. Usually you find some kind of ID or credit card on them. They've been reported missing by their family or someone else that cares about them, maybe even their workplace. Nope. By the way, his fingerprints, which they were able to get, didn't show up in any law enforcement database. So as far as they know, they knew at the time he hadn't been in jail or prison, hadn't served in the military where they would have taken his fingerprints, and he didn't match anybody else on file. He also his DNA, the DNA sample they took, didn't match any of the samples that they had in the Department of Justice's missing person database or in the national DNA database run by the FBI. His face didn't turn up anything in the facial recognition computer databases, and he had no distinguishing tattoos that would have ended up in a database somewhere. And on top of that, I guess the other thing that was weird was there was no indication of foul play. He had 30, like you mentioned already, he had $3,500. It was still there in the tent, so no one took it. Didn't look like anybody conked him out, tried to rob him or something, strangle him. Um,
Especially in Florida, that's surprising.
Yeah, yeah, Florida man missed this one because he was he was just it was just sitting there. He had food nearby. This is interesting. Maybe this is one of the most mysterious parts. He had food nearby, but he was hollowed out, weighing just 83 pounds on a 5'8" frame. So really about half the weight he should have been. I mean, essentially, super emaciated, right? Almost like he had starved to death or something. They couldn't really figure out what his age was. They put it roughly between 35 and 50. Quick hint, it was closer to the 50 than the 35 in real life. And the only substances he tested positive for were ibuprofen and an antihistamine. So
What are
nothing.
those, by the way? What are those, by the
Uh,
way?
Ibuprofen's like Advil, just a painkiller. It's just a form of pain. It's just like there's a couple different painkillers. There's aspirin, which is aspirin. The main ones are aspirin, which is aspirin. There's ibuprofen, which is another painkiller. Um, I don't do that one anymore because it's pretty hard on my stomach. I think it's essentially anti-inflammatory. And then acetaminophen is Tylenol, but that's the base ingredient for Tylenol. And
Oh,
if
okay,
yeah,
yeah.
just word to the wise. If aspirin or ibuprofen give your stomach a hard time, take Tylenol because that's much easier on
Mm.
your stomach. And yeah, his cause of death, according to the autopsy report, was undetermined, and he just, for some reason, just wasted away. And they were like, "Well, why didn't he try to find help?" And a lot of people compared it to, there's a famous case of a guy who there's that movie
I've
Into the
seen that.
Wild.
I've seen that movie, dude. That's a crazy story, to be honest.
So, I mean, it's not. I mean, we've run into this in our own cases. Sometimes people go out, get over their head in the wild, and they kind of they get too far where someone can't help them, and then maybe they starve. So that actually happened to some other guy in Alaska, where he got out beyond everybody and starved to death. 22 miles away, even from the nearest road. Which no wonder, but that wasn't the case here. This dude was only 5 miles away from a highway. He wasn't really in that remote a place,
Yeah,
and he had no note and no evidence that he had spent his last days calling out for help. So I think from this point, I want to turn it over to you because I think you have some good info on
yeah,
what happened with the search, and then like stuff that I didn't know. So I'm really
right.
excited to hear the secret life of our mostly harmless guy.
Exactly. One thing before I jump into his secret life, I also want to mention a few other details about the way he was found. Well, pretty much he was found, right? He was unaccounted for. Let's remember that dude called Mike. Um, what was his last name? I already forgot. Basically, he saw him, I believe, 99 days before he was found. That would mean that he was unaccounted for 99 days. That's like over 3 months. And actually, that meeting of them happened right around, I'm assuming Noble's camp. You know what I mean? Noble's camp. If we jump right now to the Google Maps here, he also was found dead at Noble's camp and things like that. So there are either two possible things, or at least investigation and things like that. I mean, this is not determined as of yet, but there are two possible things that he could have done. He either, shortly after meeting Mike, just sort of wasted away, as you said, in this Noble's camp area, which is, I think, probably the more rational thing to believe, but I don't know. The other theory is that he actually managed to get to Key West, because remember, when he started this trail, I think as early as, even, I don't want to, make a wild guess here, but I would say maybe even somewhere near New York area, just in the beginning stages of his trek, he actually told people that his end goal for the trip was actually Key West, Florida. So I think there's a good chance that, he reached Key West, Florida, and for him that was pretty much it. Now my life is completed, and I'm just gonna go back to Noble's camp. He probably like did some thinking about everything, fell asleep, and just like died in that way. Now let's bring it back a little bit. So how they found his body, I don't want to get into the whole story of how his identity was revealed. That's a whole thing you could read upon on like the Wired articles, which I thought was like the dude who wrote the Wired articles. He's a bit of a douche. He was like,
Yeah.
me. Look, guys, I solved this. Me. Like, yeah, we were
Padding,
looking.
padding, padding. Yeah, a lot of rambling. I mean,
Goddamn.
I should talk, but yeah, the guy rambled a lot and put a lot
Yeah,
put
yeah,
a lot of extra crap in there.
yeah,
But I mean, yeah, I guess I mean to me that yeah, like you said, I mean, look, long story short, they used DNA, right? They
yeah.
used DNA. They tracked him down to like one particular part of the country because you can do this, the same thing for the Golden State Killer. Even though this guy wasn't a killer, they find someone else who ran a DNA test
Yeah.
who is like ballpark close to your DNA profile, and then they just start making phone calls and stuff and talking to people. So yeah,
That's the crazy thing. Like I didn't really get the detail because I think it's conflicting reports regarding what was like the last piece of the puzzle. Because the thing that I've listened to yesterday and some other things that I've read over the week actually state that what actually in the end solved this mystery wasn't his DNA profile, because I think they from the DNA they could probably link someone or like link the general area, but they never got the actual person. You know what I mean?
that's right. Yeah, yeah.
The
They found the area. They found
exactly.
Lafayette Parish or whatever it was in Louisiana. Yeah,
Exactly. And how they found out about his actual identity. I think it was during Facebook posts and things like that. When one of a lot. First thing to mention here is that this case was massive, right? This was, and I completely missed it. By the way, I wasn't aware until it was solved. So that's crazy on my part. Someone actually was sharing, the Facebook things, Facebook posts, etc., etc. And one person, his like I believe friend back from Louisiana. I think it was a female friend who may have lived with him for a while. I'm not really certain if that was that particular person who reported, that, yo, I know this guy. And, we found out that this guy is actually Vance Rodriguez. So, Vance Rodriguez, he was a pretty interesting character to say the least. I have a little bit information here that, when he was, if I'm not mistaken, when he was 15, he tried to kill himself back in Louisiana. He went like a little bit off the track where he was living. I'm assuming in somewhat of a rural area. He had the gun on him. He shot himself in the stomach. But, after shooting himself in the stomach, he realized that I actually want to live. I don't want to die. So he managed to like sort of crawl a little bit and like wave his hand, and some passerbys pretty much rescued him. That's how he had that like big somewhat visible line scar on his stomach. It wasn't like a super detailed scar that they could like sort of trace back. So it wasn't like a key indication of who this man was, but he had that stomach scar, just a little scar, as you've said, no tattoos, so they couldn't use visual identification for his identity. Another thing to mention here is that he did have perfect teeth, like his dental records. They didn't have dental records, I'm assuming, which is crazy. I think you could probably do that, but they for some reason didn't have that. But he had perfect teeth, indicating that he had consistent dental care. And later on, when they revealed that it was Vance Rodriguez, things started coming out. He especially was a nuisance, I would say, to his girlfriends at like most times. Like back in Louisiana, I'm thinking, back in Louisiana. So back in the day, when in his, I would say somewhere in his 20s, I would assume, he had a girlfriend of 5 years. She came out, she said that he was not a good dude, that he, did like some violent things in regards to her. He like sort of domestic abuse, all of that crap. He was doing that to this girlfriend. The mother of that particular girlfriend was like, yeah, I'm really happy that they split it up and that Vance was a bad dude. Also, Vance is known to have been a almost like a somewhat bipolar person. I think the actual, and I think he had the actual diagnosis, which was not bipolar. I think it was something with schizo, but it was not schizophrenia. It was something like where
Like schizoaffective, maybe.
some dude, this could be it. I haven't
Yeah.
marked it down, but this could be it. And he is known to go on these like I don't know, periods in his life. Some friends called it outages, and on these outages he would ignore everyone. He would ignore his family members, etc., etc. And pretty much people were thinking that he went on one of his outage when he died, because that was proposed, that he went on one of these like psychological outages. Now, one thing to mention here, a really crazy fact here, the catalyst for his trek, because his personal life, I don't want to get into it too much. He wasn't really close to his family members. His family, a friend, right? So, dude, one crazy part is that his family members have not made a statement, have not reported him missing, nothing. His family members are like not choosing not to talk about this guy. So this guy was like had like not the most perfect relationship with his family, that's for sure. Now, one of the friend of Mostly Harmless back in Louisiana just left a cryptic message on Facebook and also denied any further comments that there was a reason his family didn't report him missing. I thought that was pretty wild. Also, when he was living in Brooklyn, he had met a girlfriend, right? A woman that he was living with. I mean, the landlord said that he referred to her as a girlfriend and they were living together. I had some information that at first the relationship was pretty cool. He was pretty nice and did like pretty, I guess, cool things for the girlfriend. Like was really like taking care of her, or like just doing nice things and small nice things like that. But after a while, I think he went on one of these outages where he completely ignored her. Then the most wild like thing happened ever, right? This girlfriend was a part of, let me just get this right, dude. This girlfriend was a part of a terrorist attack. This is crazy, dude. This is where this thing turns real wacky. His girlfriend in New York, not the one that he was abusing in what it was, Louisiana. The girlfriend in New York was a part of the 2016 New York and New Jersey bombings that happened on during the September 17th and 19th, 2016. I personally have not heard about these bombings, in part because no one died. Now, the dude who was responsible for the pipe bomb that exploded in Seaside Park, New Jersey, he was some crazy dude. Basically, I don't know. I don't want to mention any names here, but the no one got killed, but there were 35 people injured, 31 civilians in Manhattan, 3 police officers, and the suspect in Linden, because the suspect had like a shootout with the cops or something like that, and they like booked him with like life in prison without parole. So he's probably not gonna do any more of that. His name was like Ahmad Khan Rahimi, something like that. He. By the way, this dude was not part of a terrorist organization. He was inspired by Al Qaeda. That's all I have on him. So she was a part of that bombing. She got injured, and she developed PTSD, where she could not do anything pretty much on her own at one point. And for a while, I think this was one of the biggest catalysts why the relationship turned sour between Vance Rodriguez and his girlfriend, who is not named obviously for personal reasons. And at one point, he actually threatened her that if you ever leave me, because it was weird, I would assume that he wanted to split up, but he was sort of still attached to this woman, where he didn't really want to split up. It was a weird, I don't know, it's some weird relationship situations right there. And he told, if you ever leave me, I will dox you. And she thought that this was like a serious threat because, he was an IT guy. He was, from what I've gathered, he was actually on the higher echelon in terms of like IT. So he was really knowledgeable. Doxing someone, I mean, I wouldn't really be super, I mean, if you're like a simple person, who cares if you're doxed or something like that. But I will say that didn't want to take care of her or deal with her PTSD, because apparently she couldn't be alone, and she would really get I believe the information was that she was really messed up in public places, because I'm assuming the bomb exploded in like a public area, so I don't know, maybe that like actually gives you like PTSD. That's a messed up thing for sure. She ends up leaving him, and I think that when she left him, he decided to go on this like big trail. And I just want to mention this fact that I actually do believe that that was the main catalyst for him. I do believe that when he started trekking around the New York area, which he, by the way, how he got to the trail was pretty crazy. He just decided to leave one day the apartment completely, like just took his stuff and went to the train station, got like on a train and started trekking. And shortly he got the nickname Denim. So I think that's the whole backstory on the word, on his nickname Denim, things like that. I want to say that I do believe that he started trekking because he wanted to sort of leave his life behind a little bit, because things were too much. And maybe he was really happy at some point, but maybe on the later stages, especially when he was approaching Key West, he realized that, probably his trek is coming to a close. And then he probably was like, I sort of got the sense that he was the type of a dude who wouldn't want to figure out what's next. I think IT guys are like that. IT guys are like, I want a safe life, everything's like safe and secure, I just want to play video games. I want to know what I'm gonna be doing tomorrow. I want to know what I'm gonna be doing a month from now, a year from now. They hate the unknown, they can't deal with that. And I think he was one of those guys. Like, he's approaching Key West. He was someone who needed a mission, in life. Like, he needed someone to tell him what to do, pretty much. So in his head, he told himself, my mission is Key West. At the beginning of the trail, he was probably, I'm never gonna make it to Key West, I'm probably gonna turn back. But he enjoyed himself. He was really happy, he was really friendly with everyone. Now he's approaching the ending parts of his trail. He's thinking to himself, God damn, I need to figure out what's next. And I think he just, said, I think he did probably reach Key West or something like that, because he wasn't accounted for 99 days. Goes back to Noble's camp, was like, I don't want to figure out what's next. I'm used to like project managers giving me like tasks. I don't want to think for myself. And he was like, I'll just sleep away. And that's what pretty much happened. So that's my analogy of the whole case. And that's just all I wanted to mention on this case.
I mean, so do you think he almost went like I don't know the right way to put it. I mean, he just decided to stop eating, like he went on like a hunger strike kind of suicide thing, because it sounds like he wasn't. Like, I guess let me put it this way: if he had somehow killed himself or poisoned himself, or I don't know, even had a stroke, right? Had a stroke and just passed away overnight, from like, because if you don't drink water for a couple days, you're gonna die. Like, that would have been 160 pounds worth of rotting meat, rotting poor, Vance carcass there. But instead, it looked like he'd been alive for, several weeks, just not eating. Like, if you stop eating, you probably weigh, well, I'm assuming 160, 170. If you stop eating today, in a month from now, you'll probably be down to like 120, 110. You'll burn through a lot of, weight, especially muscle, as your body starts to consume itself, assuming you keep drinking water, right? So like people that go on hunger strikes in jail, like they'll go a month and they'll put their health in danger, lose a lot of weight, or, people in death camps, case in point, they lose a lot of weight, become like walking skeletons. So he almost sounds like he was at walking skeleton level, but he had food right next to him. So it almost sounds like a force of will that he didn't, you know what I mean? So maybe I'm assuming he kept drinking water, because
You
it's
know,
kind of hard to not drink water. But
yeah. The thing is, this is like one of the big mysteries. I want to also mention the fact that we have two mysteries here. Even though it's solved, it's not completely solved. Initially, we had three mysteries: who's the dude, how did he die, and why did he decide trekking. So one of these three mysteries is solved. We know it's Vance Rodriguez,
yeah,
but the other two mysteries, how did he die, which I do have, by the way, I have a coroner's report statement somewhere in my notes real quick. So basically, his death was determined inconclusive and undetermined. So we don't know. The police doesn't know. I think it's a big mystery. I will say that one of his friends actually said that a female friend from back in Louisiana said believes that he went on one of his outages again. So I think the family members in Louisiana were used to this type of behavior because we don't have their comments, we don't know. And actually, the interesting part was that when the family members were contacted by the police, etc., about regarding their dead family member, son, brother, etc., because he did have a sister and things like that, none of them were surprised about him taking this trek. I think that says a lot, because I mean
Yeah.
it's a pretty surprising thing to do.
Well, I think, I mean, and I'm actually going to amend my comments because I don't know. I don't look. I don't know if this will be that controversial. I mean, domestic accusations, and he's not here to defend himself. Notwithstanding, I mean, it sounds like someone that was mentally ill for a good portion of his life, and like a lot of other homeless people, he had what sounds like very serious mental illnesses. So, I'm not at all surprised that his personal relationships and or professional relationships were unstable, maybe had a lot of acrimony, maybe some domestic violence like the accusations are. I don't know if he was ever convicted for that. It would have been nice if there was an official record for that, but we have some accusations. But I won't doubt it necessarily. I mean, and then I guess I'm not at all surprised that he walked out on his relationship in his house because, I mean, if you said it sounds like he may have been diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. I'm looking at the symptoms and it's like, yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch of symptoms. Once again, this is not exact science. So as much as psychology and psychiatry has made huge strides, this is all still stuff that gets redefined every other year. So yeah, like bipolar, manic episodes, fugue episodes, hallucinations, delusions, disorganized speech, catatonic behavior. That certainly sounds like he may have gone into some kind of catatonic fugue behavior, in the tent. Maybe that's why he stopped eating and taking care of himself, and maybe that's why he was responsible. I think for sure he was the wrong person. He was never going to be able to take care of that girlfriend with PTSD, right? I mean, this is not a nurturing. Maybe he's sometimes nurturing when he's manic, or maybe I don't know if he was on any medications. It doesn't sound like he was taking any medications when he died, but if he ever tried to take medications to control the bipolar disorder, I mean, I'll tell you, just bipolar disorder by itself can be hugely crippling for a lot of the people that are afflicted with it. This isn't to stigmatize those people, it's to really acknowledge their struggle, that some large portion of people with bipolar disorder will at some point attempt to take their own lives, like he did,
By the way, dude,
early on. Yeah.
yeah, I also wanted to mention, dude, before we forget, uh, you got that information regarding his age. Do you want to share
Yeah,
that with
yeah.
us?
Let me. Everyone's on the edge of their seat, right? Yeah. So, a few years ago, sometimes you try to look up people, and I don't mean not in a creepy way, but just like, oh, you're like, whatever happened to this person? Whatever happened to that person? Oh, I was friends with this person, and like, if you want to find somebody these days, there's all these companies that try to sell you like, oh, just pay us $20 per month or one time, and then like, come on, dude, I just want to know where like my roommate lives now, from college, something like that, or like whatever happened to like this person. So anyway, what happened was I actually found a site. I'm not going to say what the site is because I don't want to ruin it. Don't want to ruin a good thing. I found a site that doesn't charge any of that stuff, and it was for it was a resource for genealogy stuff. So like looking up, former family members, and it just so happens that you can look up a whole bunch of other stuff for free about people, and it's super useful. And it's been like this for more than 4 years now. So when I was researching this topic, I saw that they solved it. I saw his name, and I'm like, dude, how old is the guy? Because all these articles wouldn't say how old. That was one of the big mysteries, right? Everyone's like, how old is this guy?
Yeah.
How and none of them said it. Even Wikipedia won't say it right now. And I'm like, what? We know his name, right? Like he's a known person. How the hell do you not have his date of birth in there? They don't have it. So I went and I looked it up. Long story short, too late. Uh, he, the two Vance Rodriguez entries I found for Louisiana for exactly the area that he would have grown up and had contacts in from, like, let's say his 18th birthday on, which is what these records are restricted to. He was born in either 1976 or 77. So that would have put him in, I think, his early 40s when he died. Is that right? What year was it when he died again?
Believe 2018, since he was found in July.
Okay, so 2 years ago. Yeah, so that would have put him at about, what, 41, 42 when he died. So, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So that means
He did,
that
I will
one,
say, he did
yeah.
seem, in some of the pictures, he did seem a little bit younger. I would actually even thought at first when I found out about how he looked, to me, he looked like he was someone in his early 30s, you know? At least some of the pictures,
Yeah.
like, I mean, he looked like a young dude. I don't know, man. Maybe he had like that, young face or something.
I mean, I guess the other thing, so I get, once, so part of my spiel here was just coming to the defense a little bit of, honestly, it just sounds like he was a homeless person. He was a charismatic homeless person who, it turns out, like you said, had more than his share of issues in his life. I guess not, we shouldn't be super surprised that somebody running around with like his whole life strapped on his back, living like a homeless person, mountain man, maybe is not is not all there, or is kind of running away from his life. But I think part of me really wants to look at this a little bit, because especially now, and I mean especially after the kind of year we had, we're kind of coming to an end of an era where I'll just tell you, give it from my point of view. Here, when I was in college, was kind of when the internet started, let's say, or got going. You know what I mean? Where it was like everybody could get on the internet. And I've spent my whole career working in, let's say, the technical field in the internet. And we've kind of had a whole bunch of promises. I've worked for a lot of big companies. I've worked for some of the biggest companies there are, at least in different industries. And this is me with pretty decent mental health and a couple of college degrees under my belt. And even I am running into like major struggles in my life. Like it's hard to find work now, even given everything that I've done. And you know, I'm I'm on paper probably in the top 10% of earnings in the United States. So if I'm having trouble, imagine the kind of changes in our society that are putting pressure on everybody else, especially someone that, like living in a super stressful place, New York. Like we have all these pressures on us. We're like hamsters on a hamster wheel, working our butts off to pay for things that we can barely afford. And then at the end of the day, what does this guy have to show for it? And like, mind you, yeah, he's damaged, and it sounds like he's been struggling his entire life. But a lot of us, especially given the stuff that was going on this year with the health crises and things like that, it does make you kind of stop and say, wait a minute, what is this system we're being set up on? This isn't like me pushing a political ideology. I'm not trying to tell you to vote for this candidate or that party. I'm not trying to like say like socialism is the answer or capitalism is the answer or liberty. I'm not pushing anything like that. Anybody that knows me in the show knows I don't do that in this show. But what I am saying is maybe this is one of these periods where we all need to step back and say, like, wait a minute, what are we being asked to do? Why are we being asked to do it? What is it accomplishing? And is that what we're here as human beings for? Because you look at this guy, and I can't help but can't help but think, what a waste. Like, yeah, he had issues, he had mental problems, he wasn't super dependable, but man, I mean, we've run into people that were 100 times worse than this guy, who had quote unquote more productive lives, or who on paper, someone would have said, oh, they had their stuff together. All this guy wanted to do was go for a long walk and talk to people. And then when it was done, he couldn't figure out what to do with his life, because his life didn't fit the pattern of what was out there back then. So I don't know, food for thought. After we get out of this crisis period we're in right now, what's going to happen? And, for all of you listening today, what are you doing with your life right now? What's your plan for the rest of your life starting today? Huh.
Yeah, I know, dude, that was pretty
Yeah,
funny.
yeah, that's light, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So pretty much, I think we're just about to wrap up for episode number 40. I mean 80. What am I saying? 40 was 40 episodes ago. So yeah.
2 times 40.
Exactly. Quick math. Now, I think we're about to sign off for the next week. I think we have a cool case lined up for everyone. So yeah, guys, thank you for listening to the Solvable Mysteries podcast. As always, I hope everyone enjoyed themselves. And I hope to see you all next week when we are going to be doing a pretty unusual case. I mean, a case that, we have probably thought about doing for a while. I think it's going to be pretty fun. It's definitely going to be something different for sure, but we'll see what happens. And yeah, guys, as always, stay safe and peace out.